Alright, everybody, it's our Klaus here, and very excited to present this information today. And I do want to note at the beginning that the bar is going to be set exceptionally high for this video. As I was going through all of the research that I will be presenting today, the number of keystone concepts that came up just continued to pile, and so I've done my best to make this as concise and comprehensive as possible, but in order for it to resonate at the level I'm hoping it will, I really encourage that you look into any of the other 5 videos I've done talking about this damn cover. Or excuse me, I guess I've done 4 other videos on it. This is going to be the 5th one today, which I really had no intentions of doing, but in going through some comments from the other videos and tracing out some research that I'll get into later on, it just kept sending me right back here. And so we've looked at this from some very interesting angles, and today, let's go the route that I've been steering away from because it's gotten so much attention, but I don't think it's been properly deciphered yet. So let's do just that today. And let's take on the centerpiece of this, and we're going to look into the symbolism of the stork and why it is the chosen creature to be carrying the newborn here, of course, with the 10-digit barcode there. And the first notion I heard on this was pertaining to world population, and I think that's a great idea with this, of course, with the baby being delivered and contributing to that. But I feel there is way more there. And as we begin to set the foundation here, the first bit I want to point out is, again, that is a 10-digit number being carried by this bird. And we have been talking about another 10 carried by a different bird and what it has to do with understanding all of this symbolism. So not only do we have the phoenix here in that number, but we've been talking about number 10 in connection to the wheel tarot card, the idea that change is the only constant. And when we look around the world right now, we see that most everything is in a state of flux. Everything is transitioning, it is being challenged and overturned. And now the intention of that and the extent to which it will go is what remains to be seen. And of course, it is what many feel is setting the stage for ushering in a very big change, as in a world currency. But we'll elaborate on that more as we go through this video today. But what I want to introduce here is that we're going to be discussing the role of the office in all of this. Now, this is one of the most successful television shows of the 21st century. And as you can see here, referenced as 10 years in the making. Remember, it's a show about a show. These people being monitored. Again, normalizing that. But the episode in particular we're going to be talking about is the final episode for Steve Carell's character, Michael Scott, and how the symbolism of that episode connects to a presidential assassination. Now, the hidden coding in that show really is phenomenal. Again, Michael Scott is the name of the first CEO of Apple Computers, as well as a very renowned writer. But we'll talk about that more later. To really get this into motion, though, there is some coding that we absolutely have to establish here. So on the right side of your screen, there's a refresher on the numbers 7 and 10, both perfect numbers. Both will be coming up a lot today. But take a look over on the left side of your screen. Again, The Office, a show said to take place over 10 years. We take the initials of it and we add them together for the number 35. Now we take the 10-digit barcode from the stork and add those numbers together, and we get the mirror of 53. Now, that catches my attention for a number of reasons, but remember, this cover is all about mirroring things. And these numbers on the barcode arguably are not mirrored, right? Because we can read them left to right. But hold on to that. If we add those together, we do get 88, which is a hallmark for this research at this point, connecting to these ideas of false flags and Trump and Putin. And you also see these major keystones that I've been presenting to you and delving into pertaining to the film Get Out, the American poet Walt Whitman, and the pangolin. Again, see those videos for more. But let's break these numbers down. 35 stands out to me because immediately, right, that was the number of days in this recent government shutdown. Now, the longest in U.S. history. Of course, we talked about that in the previous video and how it was this slow burn to see how others would react to those who normally are able to provide losing everything. But when we look at that 35 value, it brings up UN and NASA, and they will be coming up a lot today. So look to the right side of your screen, and staying in tune with mirroring things, if we look at that backwards, it gives us Asan, which is a Hindu name which gives meaning to heavenly messenger, snake, Lord Shiva, and Lord Vishnu. Again, these dualistic concepts, the destroyer and the protector, embodied in the same. That's this whole great work, is uniting those opposing forces and creating that balance, that singularity. But since NASA will be coming up so much today, let's note a couple of other things about them real quick. Let's just get it all out of the way and take note. So, of course, connected to the International Space Station, the initials of which give us ISS, reducing down to 911. And when we're thinking about NASA and this new age in a different lens, we have this seal for their NEMO program. Again, the world's only underwater research facility named Aquarius. Now, of course, you see the moon and the sun here, this idea of uniting these dualistic forces. We have 2 5s represented by the waves on each side here, meeting in the middle, our moon number. We have 6 circles and 4 points on our Star of Bethlehem for the number 10. This as above, so below symbolism also sticks out, and if we invert and mirror this, we do see NWO, the number 33. So I've talked about all of that in the past, but it's very important to have it at the front of your mind as we move forward through this. So looking back to the left side of your screen here, let's look at the mirror of 35. And that simple value of 53 gives us the wheel. And it's funny because we get into that number adding up 10 seemingly random numbers held in this bird's mouth. Now, of course, this other piece I'm trying to get across to you is the office's connection to that number. But I want you to think about them selling paper. Now that goes in a different, we've got some connotations here. We can think about that in its connection to leaves of grass, which will become more deeply rooted as we go through this, as in leaves is signifying paper and grass is signifying poetry, but also in this idea of money, right? I know they obviously don't sell money, but that's what we have, something blank that you create what you will with. And that is exactly conceptually what we have with money. But now look at the coding for paper. And you'll see here that it shares values with Walt, which, remember, does mean to overturn. And you also have the reference to the end, a new age, and importantly here with our discussion of birds today, Binu. So let's take a look over here, because this is an ancient Egyptian deity linked with the sun, creation, and rebirth. and may have been the inspiration for the phoenix in Greek mythology. So you see how all of this is starting to tighten. But look further here, you can see him playing a role in the creation of the world, being said to have flown over the waters of none that existed before creation. And remember, the path of none is connected to the 13th tarot card, the death card, which we've been talking about tremendously lately. And again, it really translating to the idea of progress or transformation, as in all of this 10 energy that we're seeing right now being pulled out is leading to this major departure and arrival to a new place. So again, you can see that accompanied here with this symbol connected to ideas of rebirth. One last thing I want you to tune into here is it is said to have been based on a now extinct species of heron from the Arabian Peninsula and was deemed the Binu heron. So hold on to that, because that is different than a stork, but I am going to show you how it is connected. So in moving forward here, let's take a look. Let's stay on this number 53 for a second though, because the 53rd day just so happens to be February 22nd. And you can see some other breakdowns on that number there. But what I want to show you here is when we get back to looking at that Stork's barcode, we can get two area codes out of it. We have 717 in the front, and then when we mirror, we have 938. And importantly, 717 stays the same. So that is the area codes for Pennsylvania and Alabama. Now you can see here, if you add the respective area codes, you get references to the devil in the Aeon card, and adding them together gives us that 35, keeping us in tune with everything we've been discussing. But what's even more interesting to me in a way is that Pennsylvania and Alabama are the 2nd and 22nd states of the U.S. And so again, you have that 222 in the references to Donald John Trump Sr. Now I've got some more coding connecting it to the shutdown, but what I want you to see is that if we're looking at the as in two area codes, it leaves us with 4 numbers in the middle. Now in my pangolin video, I did discuss with you the incredible importance of the number 4, and you can see as well this discussion on animal extinction up here, because it is very compelling. But the fact that we're left with 4 numbers is very encouraging in feeling like it's a proper interpretation. But now look here, if we add those 4 numbers, we get 18, which is the Moon tarot card. Now we can break that down and add it as 27 and 18. Of course, 27 being a death card. And we did discuss its connection to everything in that pangolin video, because they do look remarkably similar. And he is the 27th Pokemon with the 666 coding. So again, all of that fascinating to keep in mind. But when we add 27 and 18, we get 45. Trump, of course, is the 45th president. But let's keep playing with these area codes. If we add them together, we get 1655, which does give us, all out, President Vladimir Putin. Very interesting. You also have the phrase liquidate spectrum in the Roman numerals for 2019. Again, very interesting. But another hidden coding here comes from multiplying 16 against the sacred 55, and it gives us 880. Of course, Cross of Saturn, Donald Trump Chosen One, and Chocolate Factory, which we will be talking about Hershey's today, located in Hershey, Pennsylvania, which does have area code 717. But we'll get there. Now what I want you to see here is you can drop that 0 from the 880, of course, and there's your 88 again, and you're right back to all the coding about Trump, false flags, the pangolin. Now, since we're going to be talking about Pennsylvania, the Keystone State, and its connection with the office, I am going to just glaze over this bit at first, please feel free to look into this further. These references to Aquarius King and Saturn's seal are very interesting, as well as the number 1008, as that does connect to Vladimir Putin's name written out, and some other things we'll talk about later. But notice as well the coding for Putin horsemen, and that just really sticks out to me because, again, on this cover it does really look like they are at his beck and call there. But so again, all of these bits referencing a year that was 33 years ago. Of course, that is the 33rd edition of the cover we are looking at, but also this idea of reflecting the mirror. Keep that in mind. So check this out, though. Let's go to Alabama for a minute. 22nd state, known as the Yellowhammer State. And you can see that coding there. President Donald Trump and Trump assassination next to one world dictatorship. Now, there's some interesting things I want to talk about with Alabama, but I did find this worth mentioning since we've been talking about chapter 33 from Book of Lies, Baphomet with the ass-headed god. And here we have in this fountain here a ass-headed deity of sorts reading to all of his friends. And of course there's a lot of speculation about the connections of all of this. I do very clearly see the pentagram between the 5 colored frogs here. And of course, if we take the letters from the storyteller, the name of that particular fountain, we do get that 2019. So again, we'll come back to all of that. But what I really want to get at with the 938 is its connections to Huntsville. Why Huntsville is so interesting is because it is the location of the largest NASA center, the George C. Marshall Space Flight Center. And so you can see here, their first mission was developing the Saturn launch vehicles for the Apollo moon program. And again, remember on that initial Economist website when they were talking about the what was still then blank cover, they talked about 2019 marking the 50-year anniversary of those alleged missions. So, of course, you can also see here the connections to the International Space Station and the fact that the facility and all of its work was started by German scientists brought over in the infamous Operation Paperclip. So it's a tremendous amount you can read in on this here. This is all actually very central to Pez theory, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. But I do want to hone you into the Saturn V, as this is located at that facility. You can see here, developed to support the Apollo program for human exploration of the moon, and later used to launch Skylab, the first American space station. So, connections to the number 13, the number of launches. You can see it remains the tallest, heaviest, and most powerful rocket ever brought to operational status. And again, on and on. The completion of it, the design was under the direction of Werner von Braun, again in connection with Operation Paperclip. And you can, well, I guess it doesn't want to give us that. Whoa. Alright, so anyways, so you can look into Braun some more if you want over here. Of course, his connections with the V2 rocket, all the importance therein. But do check out here, it does manage to squeeze in that nice 33 on the diameter there. And what's so important to talk about, not only in all of the discussion we've had with Saturn, its connection to the 13th tarot card, but is also the V here, because that is the symbol of Typhon, the most powerful deity said to really ever be described. He is said to be trapped underneath Mount Etna, which we did discuss in connection with the cover as being the potential representation there. And of course the V symbol, the peace sign, said to be brought into the world by a number of individuals, but Crowley did discuss it being a large part of his doing in that, and again, it being the actual V sign in representation of Typhon. Now, there's a lot more that we could say in all of that, but I want to redirect you to previous videos that explore that in much more depth, because I really do want to stay on track as possible here. But so let's look at, there's a couple more 938 connections worth looking at. So check this out. On June 11th of an unidentified year, even when I was looking into the data here, there's a total solar eclipse of negative 938. And so A, 938 sticking out, but B, June 11th sticking out. Remember, we were talking about this in connection with this article from the Centennial back when there were states, the initial 13 colonies, ratifying the U.S. Constitution, and we saw the appearance of the phrase Reduent Saturnia Regna on June 11th. And of course, that meaning return of the kingdom of Saturn. And again, this is from the Library of Congress, and we did look at this in the last video. And this other one that's going to be coming up here in just a moment is going to be talking about the Saturnian age. But so, let's get back over here though, because that's just looking at that June 11th. But it's so interesting what comes up with this. You can see 938 East NASA Parkway, Gateway to the Future. And also on Amazon, NASA Apollo document collection, 938 documents exploring the Apollo mission. So clearly that number having a lot to do with NASA in any various number of ways. You can see even here, Girl Scout Troop 938 launching a rocket at NASA. They want that one in your mind. So there you go. I'm going to help put it in there. But let's go back here now. Let's start talking about the Stork a bit. So when we're thinking about this guy, keep in mind his connections to the water. You can see that is where his natural inclination is towards, and that his symbolism ultimately is generated towards the renewal of life and new beginnings. And so you can read through here, and if we go through and we look at these codings here, you do see Stork having the same values as sun and center of all. And of course that's very interesting because he is absolutely in the center of everything here. Now furthermore, the simple value gives the Roman numerals for 2019, in which he is the center of all. And it is, again, that 19 connection to the sun. Stork starting with the 19th letter. But you can see here more and more pieces connected in. But let's build it out here and add the Stork. And again, that gives us our TS for 2019, which we can add together for a 39. And looking down here, you can see the 39th triangular number is 780. And there again is your Saturnian age, truth of V, and Saturnalian. You also see Pythagoras, incredibly important in that understanding of the number 10. Of course, if we're even looking at that number, 780, 7 and 8 is 15. There's our devil card again. But so back here, though. Again, these references to global control, the Qliphoth, the sun, and the fish. Again, the fish connected to the Death Tarot card and the Path of None. Of course, the sun, right, where we're talking here. But what I would really want you to tune into is this simple value for the Stork, because it does have the same numbers as Binu Heron. Again, what the Egyptian deity is said to be based off of, and what is said to be connected to the origin of the phoenix. And so that is what you have in the center of the cover. Carrying that same 10. How interesting. And of course, that simple value of 116 here, very interesting in its connections to the 116th Congress of 2019, coming in on that which you can see as 13 date there. But so again, all of this just further tightening connections to I am Saturn, Papyrus, again connecting us to Dunder Mifflin. Furthermore, the geometric values for 39 giving us Maga and 10. So we're going to get back to all of that in just a minute here. But what I wanted to point out was I thought it would be interesting to look at the most kind of classic Stork mascot that's on everybody's mind, and it's the Vlasic Pickles mascot, right? It's the only one that I could really think of. And so he came out in 1974, which is now 45 years ago. Again, Trump 45. But I want you to see here, they say, merging the stork baby mythology and the notion that pregnant women have an above average appetite for pickles, Vlasic marketed themselves as the pickle pregnant women crave. After all, who's a better pickle expert? And so kind of a filthy double entendre that they have there. And again, this idea of sex magic always making its way into the discussion. Pickles obviously very phallic, and again, said to be held like a cigar. The infamous line with Freud, is a cigar ever just a cigar? Yes, I know he's connected to the elites as well. But so, in any case, I thought that was interesting to mention there. And when we delve into it further from that, take a look here at Vlasic Stork, because it has the same coding as Leaves of Grass and Skull and Bones and Saturn Cult, the Path of Resh, all these huge things. This reference to January 3rd, when that 116th Congress came in. So it's very peculiar. Look, 66 written out. Vlasic has a simple value of 66. It's connected to Anubis, one of the gods of the afterlife, the abyss. You have planned new era, high one. Supremely important here. So look here one more. Vlasic Pickles. Simple value, the same as World War III. Age of Aquarius. I am the Great One, the Devourer. There's that June 11th again. And remember, that's a huge Pez theory date. They had a video arbitrarily banned that discussed that date. You also see the phrase off with his head, so hold on to that. And let's look here at the initials of Vlasic Pickles. VP, same initials for Putin. And it gives us that reduction of 227. Now really that's the whole reason I started doing this video, was looking more into that number, because it is so monumentally important. But let's, for the sake of the off with his head bit here, let's look at episode 227 from The Simpsons. And that is season 11, episode 1, the 111 for the 666. But in that episode, we have a decapitation of the president by Mel Gibson. Again, that 47 or 74. But you see here the one eye, the monocle symbolism here. And the thing that just glares out to me is the Kathy Griffin connection to, right, Trump having his head cut off. All the shit she got into for that. So quickly here, you do have the kids carrying Mel off, celebrating this. And again, how this connects to the Pez theory is in discussing the change of the intro, in which we always see Jebediah Springfield losing his head, it falling onto Ralph, right? He has a brown head, it falls onto a yellow or a white character. We have these unifying themes there. Of course, also thinking about the Pez candy dispensers, in which they are heads on sticks, and when you take the head back, you get a treat. 44 bricks make up the original Pez architecture. There's a lot more there, but very brief nutshell for you. And again, this is all from that same 227 episode. There you have your Lady Liberty, or not Liberty, Justice, Also appears on the 2019 Economist cover. The mooning bit here is important because when you moon, you present your anus, which is an anagram for a sun. And so again, they are showing the reverence for that unity there. So now I'm going to start bridging over here and connecting The Simpsons with The Office. And again, it does share an important writer on there. But before we do that, do take a look at this Kathy Griffin coding here. Again, to the number 77, when that image of her in the decapitated head first appeared. And the fact that 666 days after that is going to be 326, which, do remember, happens to be the anniversary of Walt Whitman's death. And this year it will be the 127th anniversary. A number which, if we add, gives us that number 10. So also remembering that Kennedy was assassinated on the 326th day. There's a ton that we could add in there. So I've got some more reading on all of that for you. But take a look back here, because I want you to see what this Simpsons bit, the whole reason I included this is this is a long-standing running bit in here, with the 33 appearing in most episodes on this chicken. And it's this idea of it all being in the egg, right? The Most High. And so it just leads you right back here. And I did want to point that out. Again, as we bridge over to The Office here, you do have Homer Simpson appearing in essentially every episode because his doll is kept in there throughout the entire run of the series. But now, in getting to this, in talking about this last episode with Michael, let's lay out just a little bit more foundation here. So Michael is leaving the 717 area code. He's leaving Pennsylvania to merge with Holly. Not only are they going to be married, but he's going to merge his life with hers because he needs to help her take care of her geriatric father. Now remember, I've been talking extensively about that connection to the film Get Out. The second 9/11 in there is said to be on some geriatric shit. And I've really made some compelling arguments for you on how that all connects with what's going on now. And to bring it in further, on the right side of your screen, you can see the connections to the moon, end of the age in the economy. But so in this, Michael is self-sacrificing himself. He's making the choice to leave and to be one with Holly. And so in that same episode, there is a reference to self-sacrifice made by Will Ferrell, his replacement. Somebody who he finds in the mirror. And that's a very important piece that we're going to get to here. So now, if we look through just a little bit of this, when Michael is proposing, it is very ritualistic because you see here again just the presence of the hall, the walking through the fire, and then getting to the room in which it is completely illuminated by candles, setting off the fire alarms and the sprinklers. So we have this uniting of energies. Do notice that they are both on their knees as well. So all of that plays into understanding this. But so I'll get more to these other pieces as we draw closer to them. And be sure to read through all of this because, again, it's just very important, and I want to keep this as concise as possible. So look here at the episode number for Goodbye, Michael. It's the 148th episode, and it is, if we add those numbers, we get 13. It's like Leaves of Grass is 13 letters. Vladimir Putin is 13 letters. We could really go on and on with all of that, as I did in the previous video discussing that. But what I want you to see here is when Michael is talking about leaving Dunder Mifflin, he is talking about his deathbed. And do remember that Whitman's 33rd edition of Leaves of Grass was the deathbed edition, again, as we have talked about. But so let's get back here. If you look at the simple value of 148, do notice the 888 for the English value. And do notice its connection to Donald J. Trump and defining moment. This is one of the most important numbers that we see come across here. The path of none, which we have discussed in reflection of the Binu earlier on, and the Shankriyana in connection to the NASA coding at the beginning. But you notice as well just all of these numbers written out. Good gray poets here. Satanic ritual is here. The art of the deal. It's all on the table. So what I want you to see as well when we're looking at this 888, because it's just always coming up, if we look at the Roman numerals and the values for them, you do see that they have the same values as geriatric shit, my name, Leonardo da Vinci. Again, the conceptual inspiration for that cover of The Economist we're talking about. Of course, he also appears in that magic bill I discussed with you in the pangolin video. But let's keep cruising here. So the episode is 36 minutes long. We've talked about this number. The 36 triangular number is 666. You can see all the other bits there. Now, Greg Daniels, also a writer for The Simpsons, this is his 10th writing credit for The Office and the most viewed episode of season 7. So both of those numbers, as I said, supremely important. But in thinking about one other thing here, with Carell departing in this episode, he doesn't return until the final episode entitled Finale, which is Season 9, Episode 23. Now that 9/23, very interesting because that is always a controversial date for apocalyptic occurrences. But the span of time there is 53 episodes, and that brings us right back to the beginning of this video. Furthermore, the last line from Michael to the camera in his first one when he reappears is "That's what she said." Now you can see here the connections to Donald John Trump, Judgment the Star, Zion's Coming King, all these pieces. It's also immensely connected to that Erykah Badu song, Maisha So Long, that I discussed some time ago. The symbolism's phenomenal. But so again, here you can keep looking through and see how all of this just lines up perfectly. But let's look at Goodbye Michael. You can see just from that title there, both words, 7 letters, that 77, the names reducing to 11, and we get that 88 yet again. You'll notice here as well this idea of the final day. It says final appearance, the greatest sacrifice. This is a self-sacrifice. Now look here. You have there Simpsons, Judgment Day, exit only, which is the sign that appears in front of him at the airport as we last see him. But you also have the Phoenix and a perfect circle and the mirror and forehead shot. And why I keep coming back to this mirror, and especially since, again, this covers all about it, is D'Angelo sees Michael in the mirror in this Dundies episode, and he sees that he is Michael. He's always with him. But why that's important when we're thinking about this self-sacrifice and the forehead shot, as you can see in this is in Goodbye Michael. Will Ferrell's character says, if I were shot in the head, I'm pretty sure everything would be fine. I almost welcome it. And he gives this nice wink to the camera. Now, that of course connects in with these whole ideas of Revelation 13, the beast receiving that wound and being able to take it and continue on. Of course, later in that episode, we have Steve Martin, who looks like he's winking, but what I really want to hone you in here is this Hershey's bar. This is what he's reaching for when he's talking about welcoming a bullet to his head. And so you can see there the slot is M, the 13th letter, the death card. And of course, then we have 6, an incredibly important number. But then we have $1, which we could look at in a few ways. We could look at as the number 100. And in the Book of Thoth, that number corresponds to the moon card. And something else I feel like mentioning, since Ben Franklin is such an integral part of the Keystone State, is that he appears on the $100 bill, first introduced in 1914, which if we add together, we can get 33. But so if you look further through here, you can see a few of the ways that I have broken down this placement here, because I feel it's quite important. And you can see with the written out numbers here, you do have 98. And since we're talking about a bullet to the head, 98 is the same value for Have a Nice Day, which appears on the Illuminati trump card. Yeah, that looks just like him. It says Have a Nice Day. Talking about the snipers, again, you can see here a reference to Typhon, Angel of Death, the center, as we got here from the Stork. You also see 88 written out. Dualisms, all of it. It's all there. It's all there. But so now go back to the left side here, because I think this is the more interesting one. If we take that 136 and add it to 100, we get 236. We get the 33rd degree, and we get 23 skidoo. Now remember in the pangolin video, we read that entire chapter from Book of Lies because it's talking about getting out. It reiterates it all the way through. You can see on the right side of your screen there all of those connections to 18 and sacrifice, on and on. It's phenomenally interesting. So one more way we can break those vending machine slots down: 136 plus 1, Path of Death, Mind Control, Gutter Balls. Again, all of this getting us back to the Big Lebowski. So what's very interesting here is that the phrase death by chocolate does have the same values as the trump card, the Big Lebowski, and 888 written out, which, as we were looking at just right up here, is connected with this episode in Donald J. Trump. Would you look at that? It's just phenomenal. Now, in episode 147, that's the episode in which D'Angelo is finding Michael in the mirror. And so again, reiterating the importance. And so the assassination then is left to the viewer to figure out which character we're talking about. But let's break this down further. Let's look at Hershey's. You can see here that Hershey's has the same values as Bullet Catch, what David Blaine is notorious for doing and who shares that 888 coding. You can also see it coming up as Beware the T. Now this could be taken in reference to 20, as in the Aeon. This could also be in reference to T, as in get out, as in that's what was used to trigger the hypnosis. But all throughout this here, references to the number 20, Aquarius, shooting, the occult, number 1, tree of death, on and on. But let's break Hershey's down even further, though. So, headquartered in Hershey's, Pennsylvania, which does have the area code of 717. And let's see if we can find that in here. Okay, so here you have this, just so you can see it all, these connections, these numbers. But founded by Milton Hershey, who is a very peculiar man. And his initials do give us our 138. And that 138 is connected to the Pez theory and Donald Trump and the telltale head and all of these other landmark pieces that we've discussed along the way. And remember, the Misfits Bullet EP has the backside We Are 138. And the cover art is Kennedy being assassinated. All the things we've talked about with that. So his name, much like a lot of other things we've been talking about, is 13 letters. There's your death card again. Now what's really interesting here is when we look at his day of death, October 13th, we can get a 33 or we can get a 23. And again, we've gone over the importance of both. But what's really critical is he was 88. And what's also worth noting is that 1945 is the same year that Adolf Hitler died. Hitler's initials giving us our 18 Moon reference. And do remember when he made the Volkswagen Bug, VW, does give us that 666 reduction. And it had the peace symbol on it, which is an inverted cross. So there you have all that. But think about this as well. Because Milton Hershey's birth date is September 13th. I told you I wanted to look into that date, and it happens to be International Chocolate Day and Uncle Sam Day. They're both held on this day, and that's 10 days before that really controversial 9/23. But what's really interesting to me is that Samuel Wilson, the inspiration for Uncle Sam, is said to have died at age 88. And so I have that pulled up for you over here from this History Channel bit. And this is actually worth checking out as well, because it does go into talking about the cartoonist Thomas Nast, who created the ass for the Democratic Party. And I've talked about America's ass worship in more than one way, so absolutely worth looking into, in his connections to Uncle Sam. And again, that number 88. And it's just so... I wanted to pull this up because, I mean, as you can see on the right here, Columbia is what was going to represent America before the Uncle Sam bit was brought in. And how fucking terrifying is that, though? I mean, Jesus. Let's just get back here. Look at Milton Hershey. Same coding as the federal pillars. That bit that we were looking at earlier, that is connected to the ratification of the U.S. Constitution and the ushering in of this Saturnian age. But you also see again these Pez theory references, the Death Tarot card, this magnificent scale being referenced, the meaning of it all, on and on. Now, very interestingly, Milton S. Hershey has a simple value of 190, which is the same as World Pangolin Day and Vance Refrigeration. Remember, I showed you on the beginning of Goodbye, Michael, he is sitting in front of the Vance Refrigeration icon. And so here you can see that 190 coding, and again, connecting to Vladimir V. Putin, the Four Horsemen, United States, on and on, right? It's a phenomenally powerful number. But so let's look at some other things here. I just think it's interesting. Let's go talk about Hershey a bit. So he does have a lot of connections with the number 4, as you can see very clearly outlined in the highlights here. First Hershey bar being produced in the year 1900, again giving us that nice 19 sun card. You have this bit here. Since Hershey and his wife could not have children, they decided to help others establishing the Hershey Industrial School with a deed of trust in 1909. Now this is very interesting because we're talking about all of this in connection to a stork bearing a child on the cover of The Economist, and connecting it to Huxley's Brave New World, in which people can no longer have traditional pregnancies. And keep that 1909 in mind, because that was the first year that the Lincoln penny was put out, and we're working up to talking about Lincoln and all of this. But just look at these other interesting bits here. Hershey built Hershey Cemetery in Hershey, Pennsylvania, and on July 31st, 1923, transferred the land into a cemetery for $1 U.S. denomination. And again, thinking back to that $1 Hershey's bar that Will Ferrell is reaching for when talking about a bullet to the head. Now you can see all these other bits here with the Hersheys were supposed to ride on the Titanic. They didn't. Obviously, a lot to be said about that. But what I want you to see is not only did they make special chocolate bars for World War II, but the Hershey factory also helped make some parts for tanks and machines during the war. So again here, him dying at the age of 88, and these connections to all of these important numbers. Now notice as well, he is also on a stamp, just like Walt Whitman. He's on the 32-cent stamp. Of course, the mirror and ad there gives us 55, and that matches Whitman's stamp having the 55 on it. But what's really interesting in just tying all of that in is that Hershey donated $50 million to Penn State to build their medical center. And so you can see that Penn State itself first opened in 1855, and of course that's the same year that Whitman's Leaves of Grass was published. But if you jump down here, you can see the connections and the Hershey donation there. So of course all of that very interesting, and Penn State definitely on the map for the infamous child sex abuse scandal that took place there. And I'll just leave you all of this coding to look through for Penn State, but it does tie in very heavily with all of this. And of course it is in that ever important Keystone State we're talking about. But let's get back to Goodbye Michael. Here you have Dwight receiving his letter of recommendation from Michael and a business card. If we zoom in on this card, we do get our hail to 717 and then a what looks like 0177. So again, the area code and the connection to none here. Very interesting. You see as well, for looking at Michael Gary Scott, who is leaving, 16 letters, Tower card reference. You see references here to severed head and pigeon conspiracy. Now remember, I talked extensively about there being a pigeon conspiracy. This idea that this is where the Rockefellers got the starting to their fortune was through carrier pigeons, and that the Queen has a very, very huge place in her heart for pigeons. And I discussed a lot of interesting shit with that bird. I advise you look into it. But again, looking here at Michael Gary Scott's coding, look, POTUS Trump, that's who's leaving. You see here, Constitution, that's who's leaving. References to world currency, the Blackstone Group, and the Keystone State. Now, of course, the Keystone State is the 33rd largest state by area, and do remember world currency is on that Phoenix Economist cover. But when we're looking further into some bits here, the Rockville Bridge, located in Harrisburg, is the longest Mason stone arch bridge in the world, debuting on 3/30. Remember, that was the last day New York Times reported on Walt Whitman's death, and again has that 717 area code. But let's keep barreling through the end of this information here. So when Mike's leaving, he's getting into this cab, M152. And so again, there's that 13th letter again, that death card. But look at what's written out for 152, Pennsylvania. That's where he is leaving. There's our number 36, and there's our other number, 156. And if you've not seen my Soprano videos talking about the Battle of Midway and its connection to everything coming up here in 2019, I highly advise you check that out. You can see there on the right side of your screen some more of that information. But again, references to August 11. It's at 88. Rockville Bridge, what we were just talking about. And again, you can see here another rendition of breaking down this coding, 13 and 152. And it does give us our references to Divide and Conquer, Denver Airport, where Michael would be going. Global Conqueror, Trump, and Thanos. You also see here Willis Tower. Now, I've been talking about this building for quite some time, and since I made my first video on it, the movie Rampage came out, and they completely obliterated the tower in that video, or in that movie. And I was also in a Transformers movie called The Dark of the Moon, and they totally destroyed it. Remember, that building is so large it has its own zip code with 60606, and I think it is definitely something that we're going to be seeing taken down here in the near future. But that page 35, again, since we've been talking about the number 35 since the beginning of this video in particular, that is in Aldous Huxley's Brave New World when he describes the 9 Years' War. Again, that is what ushers in the new age. But now getting back here to Michael's goodbye. And again, we'll get back to this bit in just a second here. So here you have Pam almost missing Michael because she's seeing this movie, The King's Speech, and it's right after showing us this clock of 3. So in breaking down the clock, though, that can be seen as 1, 2, 3, or that 12 could become a 3, and we have a nice 33. So either way, Pam's on her way to see The King's Speech. And you can see here these connections in that title to that number 222, again, to the beginning of the video. But notice as well here the connection to conspiracies and another false flag. Down below, this is our major number at this point. Leaves of Grass, Path of Resh, Saturn Cult, the Vlasic Stork, all of that coming into play. Now, with this and that simple value of 149, we can say that in episode 149, this one, D'Angelo is shown to have a sealed forehead. How fucking crazy. And that episode is called The Inner Circle. Now again, all of these other bits here, please feel free to ask more about. But we're rounding the bend here, getting close to our hour, and I've still got a little bit more to reel through, so stick with me. And this paper company is Dunder Mifflin. So the English value of that 810, remember the 222nd day this year is going to be August 10th. Now notice as well that symbol of 135 are connections to the US dollar, order and light, terrorism. There's Saturn V. You'll also see Rod Williams and a number of other prophetic characters. Now that phrase, lots of sex, is really important because, again, at Dunder Mifflin, and you see those initials breaking down to 44, this is essentially the centerpiece of the show. Okay? And then when we have Robert California come in, a whole other layer of understanding that comes into play. But you also have this reference to a Project Red Beam, an inversion to the typical Project Blue Beam. But notice as well the numbers written out 1, 6, and 8. And that simple value is the same as enough is enough, Vladimir Putin, third Saturday, which will be the day of World Pangolin Day, which we did talk about earlier, the Great Cleansing, all these bits. Isn't that fascinating? And with that holy double 8, again, you can see all of the 88 coding here that we've gone into time and again, and how it keeps it's airtight at this point. And if you're still watching this, you really understand how airtight it is. So let's look now into the last leg of this video, talking about The Office's Season 8, Episode 8. Airing, and you can see that 777 coming out there, and all of the coding that we've gone into with that 777. I'll see if I can pull up some of the more recent bits for you here. So there you go. So you can take a look at not only when it's written out, but also its values on the right side of your screen here. But the 160th episode, obviously important, that 16, that tower card, same number of letters in Michael Gary Scott. But here we go. The episode is entitled Gettysburg. It's 10 letters, right back to the beginning. You have reference to judgment, terrorist group, Donald Trump as Adolf Hitler, phallic symbol, and destruction of nothing. Down below, here we go with our 144 again, connecting us to Walt Whitman, the crescent moon, that number 44, mark of the beast, the New Age religion, April 4th, again, that is the day that the World Trade Centers opened, the ones that were taken down on 9/11. It's also the birth date of David Blaine. But again, all these other numbers that are absolutely major to consider. But so let's take a look here at some of the bits from this episode. I'm going to come back to the limitless source code bit. But I want to go to this conversation with Dwight, Oscar, and Aaron. Oscar says, "What are you telling her?" And he says, "The truth." Oscar says, "It's nonsense." Aaron says, "Well, if you wouldn't have said that, I would have just believed him." And then Dwight goes on to say, "I'm telling you the truth, and all of history has been whitewashed." And then it immediately cuts to the scene with Gabe as Abraham Lincoln. Now, Gabe is a character often referred to as a bag of bones, skeleton man, so on and so forth. And it's only befitting in all of this discussion of the number 13, again, the Death Tarot card, the Lord of the Gate of Death, that Gabe play Abraham Lincoln. So take a look at the left side over here again, and you can see how Abe Lincoln gives us a nice 13 or a 77 or a master builder. And he also gives us this 211, and I'll come back to that in just a moment here. But again, forehead sign, the Blood King, the second, and attacks. And his simple value gives us conspiracy, 88, and the phrase "it will rife." And again, going back to these bits here from the U.S. Constitution, on this June 11th date, the first day we saw the first appearance of Redouant Saturnia Regna, the phrase "it will rife" also appeared with the hand pointing to it. And so again, all of that coming into play. But now, the other thing worth mentioning with that 211 real quick here is that if we go back to where Pam is, you know what, I actually might have gotten rid of it. I think it's here, so let's go up. Yes, there it is. So when Pam's at the airport and she's saying goodbye to Michael as he's going home to Boulder, you see that 211 over there. And so that's obviously the inverted 112 that I'm referencing here with Abe Lincoln. But so I want to point that out to you so that this coding right here makes sense. And when we look at that inverted 112, that is the number of years that Hershey Park has currently been open. Of course, all the ways we can break that down. Now take a look back here though, because when Gabe is introducing himself as Lincoln, he says, "You might know me from the penny." So as I said earlier, 1909, the same year that the Hersheys did all of that bit for children, it's the same year the Lincoln penny comes out. So that's 110 years ago now. And you can see here this coding for 110, same as president, as well as martial law, the new aeon, as well as 5 V's. Now this connects to chapter 42 in Book of Lies entitled Dust Devils, which did have that same 135 coding that we were looking at up here for Dunder Mifflin. And so all of that ties together. And again, Don Trump, 4-2, cursed number. So again, you can look through all of that. 1909, if we drop that 0 out, simple value of 199, do what thou wilt, eye above the pyramid, planned genocide of America. There you have as well District of Columbia, again, DC, 4 and 3 is 7, just like the Magnificent 7. You have again here your reference to 5 Point South, that storyteller fountain we looked at in the beginning here. So, whew, with all of that, I think that's about everything that I wanted to go through. Well, let's see here. So if we're going through here, Gabe talking about Lincoln not having understanding, the year 1865, 10 years after Leaves of Grass is written, same year Whitman writes, "Oh Captain, my Captain." And you have here him getting ready to, I guess, commit suicide, but if this is going to interrupt me here, and tying this further to Whitman, Dwight and Oscar are inside, and Oscar doesn't believe Dwight talking about Schrute Farms and the role that it plays. So you see here, he's talking about the Gettysburg Industrial Complex wanting to keep quiet these secrets. And then when they're watching this video, a woman saying, "You have to understand, poets, artists, and dancers preferred peace to war." And then that's what Schrute Farm was. And again, you have this reference to moonlight, to poets, to homosexuality. Again, this big piece in Leaves of Grass and all of that, and tied in here with our Walt Whitman connections.